And welcome to a special edition of Woodsy's Club Tour, previewing the Spoon Bowl between the Tigers and the Eels this Friday night in Campbelltown. Today, boys, I've got two of the club legends from each side. I've got Tim Mannah and Chris Lawrence. How you going, boys?
Going well.
Great,
Big
yeah.
Woodsman.
Good to be here.
What's
Good to be
happening?
here.
So what's going on in the life of Tim Mannah at the moment?
Oh, a little bit of this and that. I'm enjoying the footy. It's nice just being a fan, just
Yep.
watching it from the sidelines and not being too emotional about every result. But I do some work obviously with SEN calling games, and it's nice to be connected to the sport without being consumed by it. So yeah, it's been nice.
How did you find the commentary side of things, Timmy?
I was actually speaking about this last week with Jimmy Graham about how when you play footy, right? So you finish a game and you know straight away whether you're good or bad.
Yeah.
Whereas when you call a game, you got no idea how you went. So on my first year out of footy, I've gone into calling games, and you do it, and you're like, how'd I go?
Yep.
Where no one gives you any feedback, and I felt like the only way I knew I was okay was if they rostered you on again the next week.
Yes.
So yeah, 4.5 years later, I'm still doing it. So
It's a good sign.
It's a good sign. Yeah. I've got a good head for it as well.
Must be fun working with the likes of Big Spud Carroll.
Very fun working with Spudley. He's an interesting character, but we're lucky. We've got Jimmy Smith and Joel Kane.
Oh, two of the
They're the
greats.
main callers, and they make it easy. Like they actually help coach me a lot at the start, which made my life easy.
Oh, that's good. And Chrissy, mate, what are you up to yourself, bud?
Busy with young family, business, and not a lot of sleep at the moment, but enjoying it a bit. It's funny, Timmy, what you said then. I had a conversation with Tim Grant, obviously sitting on the sideline watching the Tigers, and without having sort of any involvement, you still have that passion and get frustrated, but then you walk away and a couple of hours later you've forgotten about it. You wake up the next day and then you move on. Whereas you forget when you're in that environment, you carry it for days. Like, because I actually, popped in one of the days, and it's not just the players, the coaches, the whole staff, they carry it, and you sort of forget when you're not in there about that. You still get, you want them to win, you're frustrated, but as I said, you sort of turn around and next day, the sun rises again and you forget about it.
You also forget how the sensitivity of being in that bubble, the NRL bubble. Like we were talking about off air, but when you're in that bubble and you're playing or you're coaching or you're like in the admin side of things, and anyone says anything slightly that criticizes your organization, you get really arced up. And I used to be the same when I was playing. Then you get out of it, and then now obviously we commentate on the sport, and you call things as you see it, and they're just our opinions. But you forget that people take that really, they're very sensitive in that space. So that's another learning curve.
Have you had experience in
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
No, I've had a couple too.
Yeah.
But you just realise it's a bigger world. Like,
Yeah.
footy consumes just such a small part. And then, like you said, Chris, win or lose, it sort of dictates your week. Do you miss playing?
No, I don't miss the actual physically playing or training. Obviously, you miss the team environment, waking up every day, getting to see the boys, and just being part of that team environment. The one thing you miss is that period between when the whistle goes. If you've won a game, when the final whistle goes, and you get to celebrate that sort of 10 to 15 minute window with your mates. So all the work you've done in that week in the preseason, that feeling of celebration with your teammates is hard to replace. But then waking up the next day feeling like you've been hit by a bus and every week, and just that constant soreness, always being sore. Yeah, don't miss that.
It's funny you say that. That's exactly what I miss. The only thing I miss when I played. Everyone says, "Do you miss it?"
Yeah.
I don't. The second I retired, I was like, I'm done. I don't.
Yeah.
And even watching boys hit each other, it was like the last thing I wanted to do. But the one thing I miss is after that win, that feeling, and I'll go longer than 15 minutes. I'll say the next 24 hours of your life.
Yes.
You wake up the next morning, the sun shines a bit brighter, food tastes a bit better.
Especially a Friday night
Coffee, you
win.
can go out of the house.
A Friday night win's nothing better when when everyone else has got the weekend off and you can actually enjoy the weekend with your family. That was the best.
Yeah, but other than that, that's the only thing I miss. And I was pretty fortunate. Like, my transition to the business world has been one I've really enjoyed. So I've loved transitioning to that business side of things. But yeah, I do miss that feeling.
It's tough, and obviously I'll be going for it now. But I speak to a lot of blokes like yourselves, and you past players do tend to say you miss that sort of camaraderie in the dressing sheds after the games, like you both have. But boys, on the topic, we've got the big Spoon Bowl coming up. Can you sum up the year for the Eels, firstly, Timmy?
It didn't help that we had some pretty serious injuries. Like, Mitch Moses is our best player. So to lose someone like Mitch for a big chunk, for most of the year was pretty costly for the club. And I'm not saying that's the only reason. Obviously they got rid of the coach early on as well, which always creates a bit of instability. But, I think there's a number of reasons that contributed. I still reckon that it's a pretty good playing squad.
Oh, yeah.
I think the club has everything you need to be the best club in the comp. We've got a new centre of excellence getting built. We've got a great stadium. We've got a really big supporter base, big sponsors, and a team that can do well. They were in the grand final 2 years ago. So everything the club needs is there. Obviously, things didn't go great this year at all. I think the change of coach needs to happen. Like, Brad done a great job, but after 11 years, I think it was time for a new voice, and I think Jason Wiles gives the club and gives the fans a bit of hope that something more exciting is around the corner.
Sorry, Chris, were you happy with the process, like with Jason Wiles? Because it was still a few weeks, and there was a bit of unknown with the players.
I don't know. I think it's hard to get that perfect. I think. You look at the way they did it, could have been done better, probably. I don't know how many of those guys would have had experience in that space before and understanding the complexities of getting rid of a coach and what the steps are.
Yep.
But it got done, and I think now that Rolls is there, I think everyone's just got to support him as hard as they can.
Yeah, we went through at the Tigers. My question, but like early on in the year, especially when it was I think Jason Taylor,
round three, wasn't it?
My thoughts and even the conversation with the guys then, similar thing. If you didn't know at the start of pre-season, why wouldn't you make the call? Yeah. If you felt like he wasn't the right person, what is 6 or 8 rounds going to do that you wouldn't have known? Because it pretty much writes a year off by doing that. And the same thing in that instance, it wrote our year off. And I think 1 or 2 from 3 or something. We weren't that bad. But surely, you can make that decision, make the tough call, and cop the heat. For it. Make it early. Give a new coach time to have a full preseason. Actually, give yourself a shot. What do you think of that?
100%. I think what happens is you get in substitute teacher mode. Like, so when you get rid of a coach, even though everyone's a professional, they want to play well. All those 1%ers that your head coach really will drive, you can get away with it because the coach that's there now probably won't be here next year. So, we're working hard from marker, kick chase, kick pressure, all that stuff that you really get marked on by your coach that you're trying to impress. That starts to slowly go out because this coach is in a bit of a caretaker mode. But yeah, I think you're right. They should have made the call a lot earlier. And I reckon if you sat down with the decision makers early on, they probably saw it coming for a long time. Getting them to the grand final probably slowed down that process. But to do it so early in the year probably had a big part to do with how the season panned out.
But that was really, with Jason Taylor, I reckon they sacked him 3 weeks into the competition. Yeah. They should have done it They knew that they were going to get done. There's a process, and what it does just prolongs it. It's just, that season's a write-off. Yeah, and all the players see it as a write-off. And like Timmy said, you've got a coach in Trent Barrett, like doing a wonderful job, but he's not going to be there next year. No. So players, they're not going to do not just on the field, but at training. Like they're not going to do the 1%ers there, the extras. They know that there's a new bloke coming in. They can get away with a lot more. Yeah, I agree. And that's one of the hard parts, and that's what the boards need to get their ass into gear about. Chrissy, season for Tigers.
I think you could probably look at it at thirds. Like the first probably 8 rounds, you would have probably thought Tigers exceeded expectations. Won a few games against sides probably shouldn't have. Showed some positive signs, and even the games they lost, they were showing effort, and they were in games, and obviously just a bit of skill and a bit of class, at different stages. But that middle part of the year, just things went really bad. Like certain games you saw, and you could see just players had given up. Players were playing like individuals, and there were some big score lines put on them. And then the back half of the year, they've sort of rallied again. Obviously, they had a lot of things, go against them, injuries and combinations. And when you're down on confidence and when you've got a young side, as you guys know, every time you change up a combination, they're just, especially in defence, and that's where when they started losing, they started leaking a lot of points. They even really started to struggle. So I think the back end of the year, it was the most positive thing I think you can come out of it is, yes, a couple of wins, but seeing young guys get probably a year or two early, get games, get a few wins as well, not just experience the losses, but actually experience some of the wins, because they're going to take that through the off season, and that's probably going to fast track the development another year or two. So I think obviously everyone would have hoped to have been a bit higher on the ladder without having any unrealistic expectations. So yes, disappointing to still potentially get another wooden spoon, but I think shining light, you've got a lot of good young kids.
You're close mates with Benji. Have you spoke to him about how he's enjoyed it, and how have you seen his first year of head coach?
Yeah, I think he's obviously enjoyed the process. I think it's probably,
he loves to win, Benj.
he loves to win, and he is a very competitive guy, and that was always going to be my for me. I think the biggest challenge I could see with him is that he hates losing, and that's why he's so successful as a player and would do everything he needed to do. And as a coach, you can prepare and you can work as hard as you want, but then when the players run out, it's on them. Yep. You can't control what they do when they go home. You can't control a lot of things when they leave that room. So how is he going to deal with that when the play, and when a lot is out of his control. So a lot has gone wrong, and I think he would have probably learned a lot of lessons about situations and how to deal with those things and sort of the inconsistencies that they've showed this year. I think next year is going to be his biggest test about what has he learnt from this year and knowing the players more, because he has, it hasn't been that long ago that he's retired. So what has he learnt from not just the playing days, but then, being able to fully separate yourself as a coach, and how can he then apply that with other players coming in and being able to manage that. So I think it's definitely a pass mark, because you can see a bit of Benji imprinted already on the side. But for him to say, yes, he's grown, you have to see, and it's not always going to be improvements or really big steps up the ladder, but it's in the way they play and the way they do things. And I think when everyone looks at a team, they can say they're, again, perfect example, Bulldogs, they're playing like a certain style. And if you can see his team...
Do you think the Tigers are playing since they've won a couple of games in a row, this back end?
I think you can start to see, a style being played. And I think, it have got a bit of that Tim Sheens, that, Benji flavour on that, where they want to move the ball, but it's not to push passes. And I think early on in the year they tried to do that, and last year they did that. But if you don't practice those skills enough, it looks clunky and you do it and everyone's like, why are you doing that? It takes, years of practicing the skills to do that. And I think he probably would have started in the pre-season, and some of those, the development of those skills are starting to come off. So
coming through though, so you guys both came to the juniors and Tigers. Was that part of you guys getting ingrained with those skills as you come through under Tim Sheens' leadership?
It literally was every single person. I don't care if you're a winger or a front rower, you should have the ability that if you have eyes up and you can see the winger open, you can throw a 20-metre cutout ball. You should have the skills for that. So. Everyone practiced those catch pass skills, those eyes up, reading
from
defense. From a young age when you came through. That was all ingrained through the system. And then if you didn't have at least a base level of those skills when you started joining the top squad, you just fell so far behind. But because everyone else had those skills, they just raised you up so much. So you just had to be at that level. And you had to practice. And the level of practicing of skills, in and around after training is one of the reasons why you look at how many skillful players come out of that sort of Tim Sheens coach era, but also coaches. Like Tim Sheens has coached a lot of Bellamy, Ricky Stewart's. Now you got Benji, Johnny Morris, Toddy Payton. You've got so many coaches because he's focused on skill development. He's second to none.
The reason why I ask is you look at all the best clubs, so whether it's Penrith, Melbourne, whoever that Roosters. They've got these systems in place from a young age, and they don't have to sign the biggest superstar to get a good team. They've created their own little robots, and they might not be the best players in the world, but they know all the basic skills. So when they come to NRL level, it's just natural.
Well, one of my biggest criticisms, again talking about criticising the club, has been over the years. And you look at when Tim Sheens got let go. A new coach comes in, new CEO come in, they want to go in a different direction. A lot of the pathway systems just went to the wayside in terms of there wasn't a clear pathway. And up until probably last year, the youngest club junior that was playing in the 17 was David Nofaluma at 28 years of age. Whereas every single year when Tim Sheens had, you'd have a flood of two or three new juniors. And yes, you couldn't keep them all, but then the ones that left you replaced with a new crop of juniors and a new crop of juniors. And that's what Penrith do. And that's what Tigers were starting to build. And then you had a big gap of 8 years where because of that, and then we lost all the juniors to other clubs. So I think, and that's where they've gone, you know what, we've identified that, we've got to go back to
I think the biggest thing is there's no identity there. When we were there, like you just spoke about skill, it was fundamental skills, and every drill incorporated some sort of skill component, whether it was a con game, even little things like, remember we'd walk across the field and you'd have to remember a certain code because you always wanted your brain thinking about things when you're training.
The license plate, what's the code? And you're like,
so it'd be like, so you start with Bo Ryan, it'll be WT05, so like West Tigers 05. And then it'll add numbers onto it, but Tim will tell one bloke and it needs to go relay through the whole team. So that's what you're doing on the footy field. You keep relaying the message. And little things like that. Like Mick Potter was, I had fun with him. He was just all about running. There was no fundamentals, there's no skill base. We used to do training against the 20 side and they'd carve us up. Because they'd have Todd Payton as a coach. And skill level, they probably had a better skill level than us. But we had obviously bigger physical bodies, but they knew how to play the game a bit better.
That Nofaluma stat's pretty crazy. Because you both debuted young. How old were you when you debuted?
I was 19.
I remember you debuted before.
17.
This is in high school.
Yeah.
We went Aussie schoolboys on our tour
After.
to Europe, and we had Israel Folau and Mitchell Pearce.
Great
Christina.
Great tour.
And you're the only one that had debuted by then. It was like, and I remember the buzz we all got that. You ran around Berrigan before you came on this tour. But you could see that obviously Sheensy was doing that. He was blooding those young guys.
He also had the Cubs program. Do they still do that?
Yeah, they still have done that, but they've ramped that up in the last 2 years. So they've put a lot of time into that. And
when I was there, they had this Cubs. It was like you get like probably the top 5-6 players of the Harold Matthews and the SG Ball, and you learn the systems that they're learning in first grade. So like Chris said before, is that when you go from whether it's SG Ball to flag or flag to reserve grade, you know what the standards, you know what the calls, you know what the systems are, because they all relay it the whole way down.
Yeah.
And so it makes it a lot easier when you got to go to those training sessions. You don't feel like oh geez, I'm learning.
You slot straight in.
Yeah, and then your skill level's up there because it's something you practice. Yeah. So that was probably going to bring it to where did it go wrong? Like he spoke about injuries before. Yeah. Coaches, what would you put it down to, Timmy?
I don't think it's one thing. It's hard to put it down for one thing.
Because I honestly, I had Parramatta in my 8 at the start of the year. I loved their roster.
Mate, their team is still a great team.
Yeah.
They got some strike all across the park. And I'm not going back to injuries, but, obviously Mitchell Pearce, Mitchell Moses came in. And I remember him playing Sharks like a week before game 2 of Origin.
Yep.
And it just made everyone remember, that kicking game is such a big pivotal point in the way your team play. Because when you get teams coming off their own try line, it changes the whole way. So I know it's a lot of pressure to put on one person, but it did change the way the team played. So that was a big loss.
Because he had foot. He broke his foot, didn't he?
His foot, yeah.
And now since Origin 3, he's had the torn pec.
Yeah, I'm happy for him. I'm glad he got that Origin thing back because it kind of, even though it was a bad year, he can kind of still hold on to that.
That's it.
But the other thing we've been pretty poor at over the last decade is there's a few things we do wrong. So one is week to week we struggle. Yep. So, and I've talked about this before, but if we had a win, we'd come to the sheds. There'd be beers, there'd be music, there'd be just like running around. Everyone's happy. Everyone's in a good mood. And then if we lost a game, it'd be like walking to you're not allowed to smile, no music, get dressed, no one talking. And that was the culture that we're trying to create from the top. So the coaching staff wanted that environment. Mm-hmm. But what it did is it kept creating that up and down. So when we won a game, we very likely had a bad week the week after. So training was a little bit lighter. Everyone relaxed a little bit. Mentally, everyone switched off. Then when we lost a game, everyone's walking around in eggshells and they're scared. So they come in, they rip in, and they have a mad week the next week.
No in between.
So we did that. But we also did that for season to season. Mm-hmm. So 2017, we finished 4th. We almost knocked over Melbourne in the first of the finals. Mm-hmm. And the next year, we're going to win the comp next year. We're going to come first. We're not coming last. It was that same thing. We ended up thinking we're killing it. And we spent the whole preseason thinking we're going to win this comp.
Yep.
And then we just got all the hard work that we used to do, we kind of just got a little bit shortcut. And then when we got in a hole, we started the year 0-6, and we just didn't know how to get out of it. Mm-hmm. And I think, regardless of what happened with the coaches this year, I think the season would have still panned out the way it did because once we got in that rut, I felt like we just didn't know how to get ourselves out of it. Yeah. So I'm hoping, and I think that Jason Wallace can hopefully bring some of that Melbourne Storm grit. I'll watch Melbourne and Roosters after the game, and the way they just, whether they win or lose, there's just that stability there, that same.
It's the culture, man.
Yeah. So hopefully that starts to come in, and like I said, I think we have a great playing group that can really do some damage. So I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, I think it's a great signing, Rolls. He was my favourite player growing up, and then seeing him in the Melbourne system and hearing so many things about him. Yeah, I think it'll be good for Parramatta. A bit of a change, like you said. Brad Arthur was there for 11 years. It's a long time, and like you said, there's a lot of top.
He did a great job. Like when he started, mate. We were wooden spooners, and we were in all sorts.
Going nowhere.
He was our third coach in 3 years, and so he did a great job to get us out of that. But like I said, any coach, regardless of whether it's a Wayne Bennett or after 11 years at one club, it's that same voice, that same.
Well, Wayne got moved on at the Broncos, that's just what happens. What about Chrissy? Where did they go wrong for the Tigers, mate?
Oh, look, I think
there's so much promise at the start of the year. Benji, new coach, Tim's moved on.
Look, I think a lot of the changes. There was so much change with their starting 13. Some were forced due to suspension. And the injury, I think one spot where I think they really struggled was, in particular, because of the injuries in the outside backs. And like you guys know, especially in the edges, you need to build that consistency and combination with players. So I think a lot of games were lost off, letting in tries and leaking points on the edges. So once you got a bit of consistency, 2 or 3 games with the same edge, that edge would sort of sew up, and then you just sort of see a lower point score. And I think it just comes down to combinations. And I think they would have hoped to have a few more games and everything go right. It didn't pan out that way. So, you just got to play the cards that you're dealt, I think, and hopefully they've all learned a big lesson for next year.
I think they will, because, look back in there, I think, 2 2 wins and a bye.
Yep.
Going into the Spoon
Yeah.
Bowl. So it's
Spoon Bowl.
sorry, we got
That's
Yeah.
the best.
So it's been obviously a disappointing year for both years, but in these sort of years, you get a few injuries, you get a new coach, certain players get an opportunity. Has there been any shining lights that you probably wouldn't at Parramatta?
I read that shining lights. I'm thinking it's a shining light, but it's also a black cloud because
It is, I know.
I would have said Blaise Lungi. For me, I'm a huge fan of the way he plays, right?
I love him.
And he reminds me of Jared Hayne, for example, when he was
Yes.
young. Just anytime he touches a ball, he does something special. He's got a bit of mongrel about him too, which from the outside back is very rare to see that kind of.
Yes. He's got shit in him.
Yeah. So the shining light would have been we've got this superstar coming through the great rates. I guess we've lost him now, so it's kind of.
Can I ask you, Timmy, what would be Blaise's best position?
I don't know. I'd love to, mate.
Because I don't know much about him.
I think I would have said fullback, but if he's going to play alongside Cleary, I think if someone like him alongside Cleary will be an amazing 5'8". So
Yep.
I think 5'8" is where he'll end up at Penrith. And it's just scary that Penrith rarely have to recruit like a star because they've got so
And
many
must
players.
burn you that it's Penrith of all people to
Just-
lose a player to. At
Well, it doesn't
Penrith.
burn me. Like I've got the most respect for their CEO of football. So Matt Cameron, he was our junior Kangaroos
Yeah.
coach.
We have an assistant coach. What a legend.
The assistant, he was
Yeah.
my assistant coach in NRL. But we talk about systems. He took that system from that Brian Smith had at Parra back in the day, took it to Penrith. And I respect so much the way they put their club together because you look at their juniors coming through.
So do you reckon he's one of the men behind that?
Oh, he'd have to be. Well, he's the guy that's kind of put together the structure at that club, which makes it enticing for young kids. So if you're telling a parent, hey, you're going to play outside of Cleary in a system that does this, and this, why would you say no?
Oh, mate.
So yeah, it's definitely a good signing for them. But for me, he was a shining light for most of the year until obviously he left. Some other shining lights, like there's things off the field like the centre of excellence and some things. Jason Ryles coming is a really big shining light for us. So there are things to get excited about.
Has he changed his whole performance staff and everything, Rolls? So it's a fresh start?
Mate, I wouldn't know.
You don't know?
I
No.
wouldn't know. I know he's moved on some of the guys that were there, so I dare say he's
That's,
going to
I reckon that's a great thing for the Para. Just a fresh voice.
Well, I don't know. Like, obviously, I know some of them. I don't know all the guys in there at the moment, so I can't really judge how good they are. But Ryles has a good. If I was coming in as a coach, I'd do the same. Like, you want your people. You want to know that your guys that have your back, that have your same vision and philosophy. They want to do all the same things together.
Yeah, and no disrespect. You want to get rid of the Deadwood. They've been there for the last couple of years. Don't know them, but
and no one footy, mate. Everyone kind of they'll move on from Para. They'll get a job.
They'll get a job somewhere.
It's rugby
league. It's the circles.
Yeah.
Chrissy, some shining lights. At the Tiger, if not one, a couple.
Yeah, look, obviously all the young players that have come through, and as everyone sort of knows, the year Lockie Galvin's had. But I'm going to pick someone else who I just think is a superstar, Samuel Afeni.
Ah, yes, I love Sammy.
Yeah, he is an absolute gun. What he's doing as a young. He was sort of coming in as a middle off the bench and then to start and play 80 minutes in the back row, week in, week out. And it's not just these, when you have young kids coming through, it is a lot of their big plays. So, the attacking plays will come out and do big shots. It's some of the effort areas that you see from him. So his kick chase and actually going down with the kick chase and making one-on-one tackles, competing for the ball when the ball goes up. Some of those little effort areas, the kick pressure, is the fact he's doing it at that age, and even at the back end of the year when he might be getting a bit burnt out. I know he's banged up a bit as well. He's going to be, if for all the obviously got plenty of juniors, I'd be making sure I lock him up for a long time.
His last game before the bye, you just know he's going to be a superstar.
Yeah, and
we had him at Manly.
Oh, really?
They were shattered to lose him.
Right. Okay.
He's going to be a superstar.
Now, where's he from? Is he a junior?
He's from
they're all the boys.
Fairfield.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
that's
great.
So his brother's Manassi and
right. Yeah,
he's got two other brothers that play first grade, but he's mate. Because so what happened at Manly? They wanted to move on Latu.
Yep.
And the only way they could move on Latu was if Tigers were able to take Samuel at the same time.
What a pickup.
Yeah.
What about Stefano? How's the club feel about losing him? Like they.
Yeah, it's hard to say because obviously I'm not in there from a day-to-day point of view, and you only get the sort of outside perspective.
Yeah.
You can see from a performance point of view, it really affected him in that period because you know what it's like when you don't have any outside distractions. You can just focus on footy. You can just get and it's not consciously, it's subconsciously when the pressure's on him, when you're fatigued, you have that split second, and you can see in some of those performances it was just that split second decision. Yeah. So either way, I think you can see once the decision was made, you can see then his performance get back to where it was at the start of the year, which it was just the weight off the back. I think as a Tigers fan, you'd be disappointed because you would have wanted to keep him, but as you've seen.
Do you reckon the club's probably a bit disappointed because he's gone to Melbourne for less money?
Yeah, look,
because they threw the kitchen sink at him, the Tigers.
Yeah, I think it probably would have been the point that I know he's previously come out and I said he wants to be part of the rebuild.
Yep.
And then has gone and said, you know what, I don't think it's for me. I want to go to another club. But I don't, as players, you can't begrudge a player for going, well, I've got a short career. How am I going to get the best out of my career? Not just for winning grand finals, but the best development and what's going to develop me. Because every player is different. So every coach and every playing roster is going to get something out of you. So you can't begrudge him that. And I don't think any players would begrudge him that. Go, you know what? Nah. To be the best player I've got to be, I need to go to this particular team and in this system. Yeah. And if it means I take less money, that is my choice. And unfortunately, that's the Tigers and all other clubs that have been down at the bottom end of the table for a long time, that's what happens at different points of time.
I know Tigers fans don't want to hear this. I reckon he's going to kill it there.
I'm
a huge fan of him. Not just on the field. He's a great person. He's a leader.
Yeah.
I can kill it. I always talk about the false economy. So I remember talking to players that want to leave their club to get more money. So go to Cowboys for extra 100K.
Yeah.
And I would always say, so just say you're a rep player and you want to get that extra 150K at Cowboys.
Yeah.
Or if you go to a team that's struggling, not Cowboys, but say a team that's struggling, then you're potentially going to lose your spot in Origin, which is 90K a year.
Yeah.
Also, that 150K, by the time you pay your agent fees and taxes and super, you're getting 46% of that. So, sometimes the players get attached to this number in their contract, but the reality is it's a false economy because you can actually make more. So, Stefano, he'll be a mainstay in Origin when he's at Melbourne.
Oh, yeah.
That's an extra 90K, potentially international as well. It's an extra 30-something K a year.
Well, you said playing at Para when you're lost and it was like a funeral. What's the price on spending a whole year in that mindset versus winning and everything's, what is the price? Like if you said, okay, this is how you're going to feel at this club for an extra 100K, this is how you're going to feel at this club and you're going to be 100K less than the bank. And most players at the time would say, I'll go for the money, but then you experience it. And unfortunately,
how do you think Happy's feeling?
Well, again, I think that's, in saying that, it is hard.
The best career percentage wins at Penrith and then goes to Tigers. And
but and that's 100%, that's hard. And you can see that with some of the guys that the decision might be, again, it might be a challenge for them. It's not just the money. It's like, okay, I'm going to try and challenge myself. But then the question comes around, if that continues to happen and these top four sides are always the top four and then the gap becomes bigger, how do you rectify it? And the only way, aside from developing your own juniors and trying to, get that bit of loyalty from a junior base and to sort of get that, is to, I know people have tossed up drafts and things like that, but if you get things like Stefano happening all the time where you cannot keep a good player because they'll just keep going to the other clubs, because that's, again, when players realise, for an extra 100, 200K, I'd rather go to a club that's going to be in a good system.
Similar to Blaze Talangi.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah, but it's also the club's responsibility to build structures that make players not want to go. So when I was coming through at the Parrot when I was young, we had a stack side of our...
what a great team.
But the only people that left, we lost Tony Williams, lost Trent Hockinson, lost Chris Keating. They all left because they had no other choice. Everyone wanted to stay at Para.
And the deals were just too good to knock back, weren't they?
There wasn't any money. It was also, everyone wanted to stay at the club, but because there was Finchy and Tim Smith.
You can't keep everyone as well.
Even James Maloney, all in front of
Ben Smith. You had Ben Smith. You had
Hindmarsh. So because there's people in front of you, that's the only reason why you left. But no one, came to the grades wanting to get out.
Yeah.
And that's on the club to create that culture where people want to stay.
That's what it starts from the bottom, the pathways and people.
Got a question for you, Chrissy. Next year, Jerome Luai comes to the club. Galvin's been outstanding at 5'8". Latu Faina's stepped up now. How do we fit all three into one? Into two, sorry. Yeah,
I've thought about this, and again, I don't see them every day and what they do on the training field, so it's hard to see. I know, Lockie has in Harold Matthews and SG Ball played some back row and played in there, and he's got that bigger body, and I think in time he'll fill out and might be a really good lock because he's got a great engine, so he can play as AEO and actually play through the middle with a lot of skill and just keep going and going and going. I think in the short term, the next couple of years, he's definitely a 6, and I think he's got the runs on the board now. You have to give him first opportunity. Where you fit Latu, he only got half a game that couple of weeks ago against Manly and absolutely carved up.
And
he is again. I think if it wasn't for some of the injuries at the start of the year, he probably would have got the jump on Lockie. So the roles reversed.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Well, yeah, because both were going good, and obviously, he was touted as the gun and the first up with all the juniors. So, I think you got to find somewhere to fit them both in. And again, but footy's a funny game. You have your pencil side for round one, and week to week things can change very quickly. And somehow the players that earn their spot find a way in the team.
It's a good headache to have, and it's something that Benji will be probably not excited about making the call on next year, but he's going to have to. Timmy, why does this match mean so much to Parramatta?
To be honest, I reckon it means more to the fans and the sponsors than it does the players. Like the players, obviously, your ego doesn't want to come last.
Yeah.
But whether you come second last or last, it's a bad year. Like it's a bad season. So players are going to be wearing this regardless of what happens in this game. But as a fan, the last thing you want to do is walk around for the next 6 months thinking your team can have last. So, and I think all the players want to make sure that all the stakeholders of the club don't have that feeling. So it's a big game for that reason. And from someone that has won 2 wooden spoons, I don't want anyone to experience that. It's not a good feeling.
When you do lose it, like what's the preseason like? Do they put extra emphasis that we came last, we did this much better?
You get flogged a lot more. Like it's a tough preseason. So, but like I said, whether you come last or second last, it's not going to change how hard you go. So it's going to be a tough preseason regardless.
Yeah.
Rolsey coming from the Melbourne system, so I dare say it's going to be.
I wonder if you'll make them work.
I think he will.
Because you know how they do that. Was it 1 week or 2 weeks?
Workers in like
as in like the
workforce. I love
that.
that.
That's great.
Yeah, it's good.
We young blokes.
Yeah,
Steve Kearney came from Melbourne, and we did that for the first 2 years he was with us.
So you did as well?
Yeah. So on the job site, and I remember Chrissy Sandy on the job site was a very interesting week. But it's good because it gives you a bit of taste of reality of what it's like out there.
It does, doesn't it, mate? So was that you'd have to go to training before, and then work all day, then train after?
We used to train at 5 or 6 a.m. Go to the job site, work all day on the job site.
What was your job site?
It was a place in Borkham Hills. I think it might have been Dildam or one of the developers that sponsored us. It was one of their sites.
Oh, beautiful. They look after you or what?
Yes and no. Yeah, I was with Heine's group as well. So
you with Heine? Lucky,
smart. Take along with you.
Got to go with the old dog.
But it was just good to kind of see, and not only what the work you do, it's also watching what the tradies go through. Like they rip in.
Yeah,
it makes you realise, okay, like we're pretty lucky to do what we do.
That's it. And Chris, what does this match mean to the West Tigers?
Oh, I think this would be 3 in a row if they get the spoon. So yes, I know it is, as Timmy said, more about the fans and sponsors. But I think for the players that have been there the last 2 years, I think 3 in a row hurts like more than just getting 1 or 2. I think as well you want to win the last game of the season. It just gives that pre-season a bit of momentum and confidence into that off season. And I think thirdly to the young guys, I think for the young players coming through and the young players that are in the side, if they can be part, again, because it looked all likely for all year that they were going to get the spoon, and if they can win the last few games of the year and avoid the spoon, the long-term confidence and just that culture of winning, because they've all come through winning comps.
Yeah.
These guys have won Matthews, one ball. Like they've come through winning and finding a way to win. So I know it in the significance of things, it doesn't mean a lot. But if they can be part of a team that finds a way to win to avoid the spoon, that'll just keep breeding that winning feeling that they've had. And then again, the confidence that they had, and there's going to only be more and more juniors in that side, will help the team long term. But I reckon it's I don't think anyone's ever been so excited for a 16th versus 17th game.
I played in a spoon bowl before. I think I
Yeah.
So we're playing against Titans, 2011, and loser gets a spoon.
Were you nervous?
Yeah. It was a big game. It was a big crowd. We had a Luke Burt. I think Bertie played halfback. Rennie Matul played 5'8".
Jeez.
So,
wow.
But I think we got to like a 22-0 lead early on, and we just kind of cruised. But that we celebrated afterwards like we won the grand final.
It's like you made the comp. Like, it's a big milestone off the bat.
After a year, it sucks when you come in that bottom of the ladder. Those moments you enjoy.
Yeah.
Well, the Tigers have got to sort of thank everyone because they've got a full packed house at Campbelltown this week for the 3rd time in a row. So it does mean a fair bit. All right, boys, where's it going to be won on Friday night?
I think it's going to be. I know you can get technical about the forwards. I think it's more going to be energy. So whoever can come with the most enthusiasm and rip in. And although we talk about those 1%ers that can sometimes go out of the way when your team is struggling, whoever can actually put in those 1%ers and play with enthusiasm will get over the line. It's going to be all based on energy this week.
Yep.
Yeah. Tend to agree. I think kicking games. You mentioned about missing Mitch. For most of the season in terms of kicking game. I think. If whoever's going to have the better kicking game and, shut the other team out, because I feel I think both teams are going to come with energy. I know the Tigers are going to be pumped up with the crowd. You know what it's like when you come with a big crowd, regardless of the situation, it does raise your energy. So I think it's going to be a really fast start. So I think, you know, the team that can finish their sets in the right position, so whoever's got the better kicking game, will give themselves the best opportunity, because I think both sides can score points and both sides can leak a lot of points. So whoever can avoid having to defend their line the most, which has come down the kicking game, I think is going to win the game.
Yeah.
All right, boys, got a last question. I want it with your head, not your heart, all right, boys? Who wins and why?
I'm going to go Parrot, but the reason being is I just think...
What a liar. You told me Tigers before.
Chris.
I said Tigers can definitely win. But I reckon... I'll tell you why Parrot. And I think it's going to be a close game. I just think there's enough senior heads in that team just get over. Like, you've got Gutho, Dylan. Like, there's enough guys that played in big games. Reggie. So there's enough senior heads there to kind of get it done. That said, though, I'm not confident because the way the Tigers played last week, and you keep in mind, Tigers were behind with Manly.
Mate,
they came back.
16-0.
And Parra had a really good game on the weekend, but they got chased down at the end.
They did too.
So I just got to be cautious that you can't take your foot off the Tigers because they can come back. And the way the Tigers played that last game makes me very nervous because they are playing with excitement.
Oh, yeah.
And they're going to have that sellout crowd. So, you know, I'm saying Parra, but I'm not saying it with a lot of confidence.
Yeah. Chris?
I'm going with the heart, going to say the Tigers. And I think the reason or the reasoning I'm giving myself is I think the young kids in the team are playing with no fear. I just think they're confident, playing with no fear. I think that's rubbing off on a lot of the other players. They're going to be high energy, and I think, you know, if again they can control the game, and Aiden sees the kicking game can keep them in the corners and give them an opportunity to score some points. I just think the confidence in them is going to get them across the line.
Well, boys, I think it's going to be a huge game. Sellout crowd spoke. Me?
Yeah.
I'm going to go Tigers.
Yeah, why?
They seem for me, they get up when there's a big crowd. I was at a game a couple weeks ago and they played a Canberra in Campbelltown.
Yeah.
They really got up for it. They got up last, as you said, against Manly. And just like what they're doing with I thought Stefano had his best game all year after he's done his contract. He made a couple of line breaks through Manly's middle. And that's probably one of the strengths of Manly. And I just love watching Lachlan Galvin. You know, he's just like a kid and things don't come off for him. But he just keeps trying. Yeah. And then my good mate, Semi Fainu. His effort areas. He got pushed to centre on the weekend, finished the game there. Yeah. He's just a competitor. But in saying that, it's hard. I got a good mate at Mitchell at Parramatta. Yeah. I'm going to go with Tigers, mate. I reckon it'll be close too. Good game. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. No, like you said, and I think if Parra can keep the momentum they've started well the last few games.
Should have beat Penrith. Dragons game. They're playing like a team that's coming first.
They should have beat Penrith the week before that as well. So. Both sides have been playing well. They've found a bit of form, both teams. It's like the shackles are off. But, boys, I can't thank enough. Special edition of the Woodsy's Club Tour, the Spoon Bowl. Let's hope. It'd be good to see if you get a draw and no one got the spoon. But there has to be a loser, boys. Yeah. I'm sorry. Thanks for coming on, lads. Thanks. Appreciate it. Thanks, Chrissy.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks, Timmy. Appreciate it, brother.